hill climbing, it's a lot of fun, but a lot of potential for it to go wrong and waste a lot of energy. Depending on the hill, how steep it is, how severe it is, depends on which body position, which technique you're going to use. So we'll run through all of them. The most basic for a hill that's not too steep, nothing too challenging, you tend to do that sort of thing sitting down. That's the only real way to take all the strain out of your arms, no big effort involved. Obviously when it gets rough, when it gets bumpy, that's not going to work anymore. But for a smoother hill, or something you're not too worried about, a long uphill trail, you can save a lot of energy doing that sitting down. So the body position for that, we're a little bit further back on the seat than the middle of the foot peg. So coming from there, back into there. Then I'm folding through my hips, bringing my head forwards and down to keep the center of the gravity nice and low, keep the weight in the front tire, and stop myself getting kind of left behind. My feet, I'm back onto the balls of my feet, almost back onto my toes, so I can drive down through my foot pegs and put as much pressure into the back tire as I can. So I'm coming from a normal seated position in there, leaning forwards into it, pushing my hips very slightly back, bringing my feet back onto the balls of my feet, head up the hill, nice soft relaxed arms. If the hill's steeper, if the hill's rougher, you're concerned about traction, or a good gauge is if you feel like you're using more than about half your suspension travel, that's a really good sign that you should be standing up. So if we go for our normal standing position, if you haven't watched that video, I really suggest you go back and check it out. This will make way more sense. We talk a lot about trying to keep your shins vertical. If I leave my shins in that same position as they would be on the flat, it's going to put a whole bunch of load through my arms. So I don't want them locked in. I want my lower leg to be straight up and down. So basically my shins are in line with the trees. So from there, I'm bringing my head further forwards in front of my handlebars to make sure I'm not putting too much strain through my arms, trying to get that efficiency. I'm also trying to stay really soft through my legs, so I'm allowing the bumps to come into my legs rather than staying stiff and having the back tire leave the ground, losing traction. If the hill's really steep, if it's really slippery, a real like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get up here sort of a hill, I need to change my body position. And this is a body position that won't work on an enduro bike. It's specific for adventure bikes. So what I'm trying to do is put as much pressure into my back tire as I possibly can without the front wheel coming up. The more pressure I put into my back tire, the more traction I'm going to have, and the more I'll be able to keep continuing up the hill. So it seems a bit weird, but my, oh my gosh, how am I going to get up here hill climbing position is almost identical to my braking position. So I'm pushing my hips back, folding through my knees, bringing my chest nice and low down into here. So I'm really pulling back on my handlebars, but leveraging down through my feet, pushing down through my feet to force the back tire into the ground to create and maintain the traction. So this is really hard on your arms and legs. There's a lot of weight through my arms, a lot of push through my legs, but it gets you a huge amount of traction, allows you to continue up the hill, and it's a lot easier than pushing a motorbike up a hill. So it's a good use of that energy. So when I'm back in that position, I've got a huge amount of mobility for my hips. So again, I'm using that mobility to affect my traction, the weighting of the bike, the weighting of the tires, and keep my balance. So nice and mobile through the hips the whole way up the hill. So another really important thing for hill climbing is momentum. So if you've got momentum, if you've got speed, the hill becomes a lot easier. A good way to think about it is think about momentum like money. If there's an easy situation to earn it, earn it. If you've got the ability to hold on to it, hold on to it. If you have to spend it, spend it. When you get to a difficult part of the hill, maybe it's off camber, maybe it's slippery, tree roots, that's a time where you need to be spending momentum, spending money to get through there without wheel spinning, without bouncing around the place. Good thing to remember though is motorbikes don't give credit. You can't spend what you haven't earned. So if you get to that slippery, horrible position, you haven't got that momentum in the bank, you can't spend what isn't there. So whilst you don't want to be roaring at it like a cannonball, going too crazy, it's often safer to attack the hill a bit more aggressively, have a bit more momentum in the bank than being sort of too cautious. Too cautious, you're not going to have that momentum when you need it and you're going to come unstuck. So, I'm not saying to go ridiculous, but you want to be committed to the hill, accelerating it through the bottom of the hill. Another good thing to think about, we call it the rule of thirds. So at the first third of the hill, the lead into the hill, the first sort of part of it, so basically from the bottom of the hill up to about where I am now, that's where you want to be generating your momentum. So the downwards pressure as your bike ramps into the hill, loads of traction, loads of grip at that point. So you're getting on the gas, accelerating hard at that point and trying to generate your momentum. The second third of the hill, you're just trying to hold on to that momentum. You've already earned it, you're just trying to hang on to it. You're doing that through using your hips to keep your bike going straight, keep your traction, keep your balance, rather than using your steering, which is going to scrub off momentum. You're trying to stay nice and soft through your legs to keep that back tire on the ground, keep powering you forwards. And you've got your eyes up, looking up the hill, trying to make sure you're on the best line, the smoothest line that's going to allow you to hold on to that precious momentum. The last third of the hill, that's generally where all the ugly stuff hangs out. The steepest part of the hill, the roughest part of the hill, the tree roots, the ruts, the rocks, that sort of stuff. The theory is if you've generated the momentum in the first third of the hill, you've saved and held on to that momentum through the second third, you should arrive at the last third with plenty of momentum in the bank so you can kind of roll off the throttle if you need to and use momentum to carry yourself through that ugly stuff rather than being on the power and sliding out, going sideways or looping out, all that sort of scary stuff. So another good way to describe it is the perfect hill climb should sound like this. As you just roll through that last bit with momentum rather than on the power. So I'm going to demonstrate those three different positions for you now. And I'm also going to demonstrate the wrong way of doing it. So the common mistakes people make with this in the hope that you guys can identify that and change your technique. So for the sitting, for the standing forwards, and for the oh my gosh position, we're going to try and show you guys the good ways and the bad ways to do it. John will hopefully make some really cool computer graphic that makes it super clear for you. Bad shins, good shins. So downhills can be quite scary on the big adventure bikes. You know, there's a lot of weight, a lot of mass, and you know, once that mass gets going on the downhills, it can be quite exciting at times. Really important is your body positioning, and it's something I see a lot of people don't have quite right. To start off, a lot of people are going downhill sitting down. When you're sitting down, it's very hard to affect the weight properly, to balance the bike out, and you end up really overloading the front end, which is going to make the front want to slide out, lose it on the rocks, lose it on the tree roots, that sort of thing. So any real downhill that you're worried about, or any real downhill to be honest, we need to be up on the pegs. So your braking downhilling position, again, we want to keep your shins vertical. So if I keep my shins in the same place here, it's going to be really, really hard on my quads. It's going to load up my arms more, but where I'm really going to feel the load is through my quads. It's going to make your legs burn very, very fast. So again, we want to bring those shins straight up and down. From there, I don't want to lean back. The mistake a lot of people make is they lean back like this. When you do that, you run out of arms really quickly. So there's no softness in my arms are too short, and my head pops up really high, which raises that triangle and allows the bike to start messing around. So a better way of doing it, don't think lean back, think hips back. So I'm pushing my hips right towards the back of the bike and allowing my head and shoulders to come down. That feels a little bit weird. It feels like maybe you're getting your head a bit further forwards, but getting your head lower and flattening out that triangle, that definitely trumps having your head a little bit further back. So we're bringing the shins straight up and down, locking in with your knees, then pushing your hips back whilst folding your head down lots of movement in your arms, nice low triangle. This is your downhilling position back in here. Your butt should be just clear of the seat, and on a rough, bumpy downhill, you should feel the very back of your seat just tapping you the butt occasionally. That's where you know you're nice and soft through your legs, your hips are as far back as they can be, and you've got that little bit of movement in there that you're using up. Obviously you shouldn't be getting smacked in the butt, kicked forwards, but occasional tap down with the seat's actually quite a good thing. That lets you know you're in the right place. On a really, really long downhill, to take the pressure and the strain out of my arms and my legs even more, I've got a little trick where I'll get right back on the toes of my left foot, drop my heel, so I'm pushing against that foot peg to help hold my weight back. Obviously you don't want to be doing this in some really slippery technical terrain because you are slightly unweighting the bike. Your weight distribution is not completely even, but it allows you to take almost all the pressure out of your hands when you're downhilling and put it down through your foot pegs, which is real good break for your upper body. As soon as I lift that foot up, I can't relax my arms completely. So obviously I'm only doing this on my left side because I need to keep my right foot engaged into the back brake, keep that control for the back brake. For your braking on the downhills, you want to be using as much rear brake as you possibly can before you start to lock and slide. So in some situations that's actually not very much, but the way to answer it is, how much front brake should I use, how much rear brake should I use? You need to use as much rear brake as you can, but without locking and sliding, and as much front brake as you need to control your speed. The back brake's job is to stabilize you, your front brake's job is to slow you down. You never want to slow down without stability, so you're never using your front without your rear. With which gear to be on the downhills, and whether to have the clutch in or the clutch out. Generally you want to be in the bottom third of the RPM range of whatever gear you're in. So if you're like, should I be in first, should I be in second? Maybe you should be in second. Should I be in second, should I be in third? Probably in third. You don't want to be going down the hill going rah, 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 rah. You want it nice and low in that RPM. Rah, 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 rah. The bike's not pushing you down the hill too fast. If the hill's that steep and technical that you feel that the engine is pushing you down the hill faster than you want to be going, that's when you pull the clutch in. If you don't feel the engine is pushing you down the hill faster than you need to be going, leave the clutch out. That's going to give you more balance and more control. So in the hill that we just saw before, I would be doing that probably in second gear. So my engine RPM is nice and low, brum, 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 and I'm using that bit of engine braking and that bit of stability from the motor to help me get down the hill. So important things to remember with your braking, specifically for the downhilling, is you don't want to prioritize braking over steering. So in difficult terrain, in slippery terrain, loose terrain, you can only ask so much of your tires. So if your tires are starting to slide, starting to mess around, as much as you might not want to, you have to let your brakes go to reduce that load on your tires. The mistake a lot of guys will make is they think they're going to get out of control down a hill. And the way I like to think of it is getting out of control is actually, it's a conscious decision you make. I'm out of control. When in reality, you're probably not. There's probably still a lot that you could be doing. You could be changing your line. You could be trying to reduce your speed. You could be looking further down the hill to see where there's opportunities to reduce the speed. Change your weight to your foot pegs. There's all sorts of things you can do. There's a very, very big difference between going a little bit faster than you want to be and being out of control. Those are two very different things. So if you do start to pick up a bit of speed on the downhill, try to lift your eyes up, look down the hill, and look to see where you can reduce that speed next. And often, there'll be little flat bits, little increases in traction, areas where you can get rid of that speed really quickly, and the fear will help go away with that. You've got to remember, your bike wants to go down the hill. If you just let it go down the hill, it will.